Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Happy sort of Saturday morning or evening wherever you guys are in the world. Thank you so much, Adam Lynch, as well, for joining as a captain. Really appreciate you to be coming on board with us. It's been really nice interacting with you on Twitter. So hopefully, nice things to come going forwards. I'm just gonna quickly start off with your chat actually on Twitter before some more YouTube comments kind of flow in and we can start reacting to them as well. So you're saying King is back. Oh, sorry. Let's just go straight to the previous message. So you said you've gone for James Ramsey to Doherty Saka. Fair enough. Very, very sensible. You might make another transfer tomorrow if you think Kilman/King isn't starting. I've actually heard news that Broja isn't starting, Adam. I'm not sure if you believe that as well, but there's a little bit of a hubbub about Broja maybe not starting. I don't know how you feel about that. Maybe you could let me know. Um, how that's sort of impacting your sort of point of view. Hey Gronk, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Nice to see you around. Probably just due to time zones and things like that. Hope you're doing well. Anyways, you are bench boosting, so I think yeah. I mean, the one thing I'd say is probably I I I know you want to bench boost to get it out of the way, but I just think that's quite a weak bench boost because you've already taken hits in a sense to put out a very strong starting 11. And therefore I feel the rest of the bench is sort of weak because you're kind of putting King and Foster and Livramento almost who all play a game versus each other, and the best result there really for you I suppose is going to be something like a 0-0 game, or I mean if King scores, but if King scores then I also firstly doubt whether Watford can keep a clean sheet, and then yeah, I'm not a big fan of Livramento being capped like that. And with Kilman too, maybe losing his starting position, I'd probably just hold on to the bench boost really. I know that's something you've been struggling with, but I can't suggest bench boosting that team. I might be wrong. It might turn out to be one of those magnificent games, like for example, when Folkel, I think he started both Foster and Ramsdale, and they both did well because Foster saved a penalty, but that's kind of what we need, if that makes sense. So what do you guys plan to do regarding Broja? Hey, Leanne, hope you're doing well too. Really appreciate the support. Nice to see you, Jerome. Nice to see you, Smarth, as well. I'll show my team briefly right now. So my team's going to be Doherty, Tierney, Van Dijk. I know there was COVID news, but I feel like he did get COVID around 90-ish days ago, so I'm kind of hoping that that's a little bit of a hoax slash rumor at best. I might be wrong there, but I do want to go Van Dijk, and then I've got obviously Trent, Son, Kulusevski, Salah. All the hits were really taken for the Spurs players, and Rafinha still sits my team. Broja still sits my team. Coutinho still sits my team. There's just not many forwards I would really like for this game week. Um, I mean, maybe I could actually start Weghorst over Broja if I'm really fearful of something. Morning, Adam. I was actually just speaking to you about your team. I was just saying that I don't think I would bench boost, but I would definitely look at, and also welcoming you to captain. But I would also maybe consider selling Broja because I've heard that he might not start. I'm not sure whether that's conclusive or not. If anyone has a little bit of insight on Southampton, that'd be interesting. Is something wrong with Broja? Apparently he has a knock or had a knock in the previous game, and there might be a possibility that Adam Armstrong could be starting. Obviously, the big transfer in the summer window. Um, Morning, Sad. How are you doing? Um, Norwood, yeah, I've taken a -8 hit for now. Might be -12 by the end of this live stream. We'll see what happens there. Initially, I wanted to get Rafinha out of my team, but with Broja being a little bit suspect, I think all I might do is just play Weghorst in front of him. What do you guys think? Yeah, you decided not to bench boost once you saw the Broja rumors. Absolutely, Adam. I don't think it's worth bench boosting. I'll be having a look at Twitter questions very very shortly. So do you guys think I should just play Weghorst instead of Broja and just call it a day? It just seems so wrong to not play someone versus Watford though. The news is from the yeah. That's the weird thing about the Southampton forums, because I remember when El Yunusi was sort of confirmed not to start, or even left Kyle Walker Peters in the game before the double game week, and they ended up both playing. Does Pookie seem a great pick to replace Broya? I mean, he's been very consistent. Even Norwich's, even though they've been terrible. I mean, I think people have been underrating Pookie, which is why I kind of gave him another rise on the cheat sheet, just because he's been kind of, trucking it along nicely. I think Tony's an interesting pick as well, in around that territory. And I know he's a little bit more expensive than Broya, but realistically, you're probably going to have to push up a little bit to find someone who's going to do a little bit better than Broya. So yeah, I might take White Horse out of my team. I'll have a look at some Twitter questions for now. All right, so Travis says Broya worries him as well. I mean, I guess you could just play Sice, right? I think if you're worried about him, then you just play Sice and you don't really make anything else. I wouldn't really transfer. I mean, you could also look at transferring Kulusevsky, but I think you've kept Rafinha and Coutinho for specific reasons, like myself probably. And I wouldn't really touch that backline too much. I mean, you the one thing I'd say is that there is space for a third Liverpool player in your team. I know you're probably worried about Game Week 30, but I think that's why you go for that sort of gamble upside, because Liverpool can haul so well. So Smart is a free transfer. I'd probably think about going for one of Saka or Kulusevski. Midfield wise, is there a way you could push away from sort of Dewsbury Hall, or are you holed up in a lot of money with some of the defenders that you have? Maybe I would just go out of Doherty. I mean, sorry, go out of Reece James potentially. Go for Doherty as well. I would at least like to have maybe double Spurs this week. I personally gone triple, perhaps a little overkill, but that's sort of how I feel. I mean, City players are going to be a differential this week, but when we're thinking about the Broya sort of news, I think maybe he has to fall. Buki must have a good matchup versus Leeds now. I think Leeds really looked poor. That's going to be a battle of two relegation contenders, which hopefully should be quite scrappy. So there's opportunities for you to actually probably change the midfield up and the defense. So Shirak's done a -8. Starting, I mean, the captain, I think, on Van Dijk is perfectly fine. As far as the -8, I like the transfers, and obviously next week is going to look very good too. And nice that you actually still have Havertz in your team. I'm glad you actually picked him up. What were your actual transfers this week? You just went for, I guess, Van Dijk, Kulusevski, Saka, or was it something else? Wildcard thoughts. This is an interesting one because I was actually discussing a wildcard with a friend recently. I'm not sure if I'd like to wildcard into Matip. The reason why I say that is because one of the things with a wildcard you have to realize is when you're going into, let's say, the back half of the season, when you have 31 plus, a lot of people will be transferring back into players like Cancelo and James. And the only thing I would say with your team structure right now is there's not much, I think, capacity to move into a defender unless you plan on taking Son out of your team. And if you plan on taking Son out of your team, then fine, that's justified, I think. So let me know what your short-term plans are there in terms of kind of reshaping your team structure in the future. Otherwise, I think I like this team, with exception to Rafinha as well. I think I wouldn't really want to wildcard Rafinha in, just because I feel like he's an impending transfer. I'd much rather have Saka for now, because you only have one Arsenal player, and I think Arsenal is going to be quite big this game week. And if you want to hedge against Arsenal, I think the easiest way to do that is going for Ramsdale and Saka. I'd probably prefer Saka over Rafinha on a wild card. And as far as the rest of the picks, I think you've chosen quite wisely, so no real complaints there. And I do like Tony so that he can kind of match at least the Leicester game, hopefully. I mean, the one thing about Dewsbury Hall, I would say, is taking him out. You would probably take him out for a player who plays next week as well, in terms of, an Arsenal slash Spurs player, and the same thing with Doherty. So if you want to take maybe someone like either Cancelo or James out of your team, then you could do that. As far as Dewsbury Hall playing next week, I mean, what do you really expect from Dewsbury Hall when he plays Brentford? Do you expect him to actually come onto the score sheet? Because otherwise, that's just 2 points. So the ceiling for Dewsbury Hall isn't particularly high. When we talk about a blank game week, you want to have players who are actually going to have the potential to haul and actually correctly cover Leicester. Whereas I don't think Dewsbury Hall really covers Leicester. Anyone else here without Kane or Son? I'd definitely take a hit to go for Kane or Son this week. I think it's quite important to do that. James to Robbo and Havertz to Kulusevski for a hit. Need to sell Havertz to fund Robbo. I think that's not a bad hit. Unfortunately, Havertz has been extremely informed, so I would be a little reluctant to do that. But I think given that if you're not free hitting in 30, then I think that's a very sensible move, because at least you're getting a player hit-wise that will be playing in 30 and redeeming some points there. Hey, Sulaiman, this is your team: Sa, Robbo, Rudiger, Cody, Shar, Salah, Saka, Martinelli. I mean, that's a great team. You got one free transfer as well. I'd probably look at getting maybe a Spurs defender potentially. I know you've got Shar, but I'm just thinking Doherty would be quite interesting this week. I don't really like Shar's games. I mean, he's playing Chelsea for one, and maybe Doherty sounds good, just because he plays in 30 as well. Subs, Foster, Broja, Coutinho, Dean. Liverpool versus Arsenal and Saka. I mean, that's the one thing where I've not gone for Saka. David De Gea will not start. Will that change your cap to Kane or not worth? I don't think there's nothing wrong with the Kane captaincy. I agree with that. As far as Broja, I think I might just do the simple move of playing Weghorst ahead of him and then just call it a day there. Maybe put Dennis ahead of him too. I mean, Southampton looked pretty poor last week, but I've been pretty disappointed with Dennis himself. Ultimately, I might make Dennis my first bench captain, or sort of first bench player. Weghorst over Broja looks good. No need to panic. Exactly, I agree with that. And probably just have Rafinha first last week versus Norwich. Does Pookie seem a great pick to replace Broja? Yep, I would agree. Leanne, you got rid of Son and Adams and brought in Kane and Kulusevski for it. I mean, I guess if you've gone for double Spurs in instead of one, then that's fair enough. I personally just brought in Kulusevski for a hit, without taking out Son. I just feel like that is almost like taking points from the same direction, but nothing wrong with that really overall. I understand why people have done it, because team structure wise, that's probably the only way you can fit. For example, like when I look at my team, some people have clearly gone for Son in the spot where Saka is existing, and then Kane as their main striker this week, and therefore it looks like a much more complete team. So meanwhile, I'm just kind of playing with Weghorst, so I can completely understand that in a week where I don't think many people have many forwards to play, and Kane is a very safe, logical pick. Would only be able to get Son if you downgrade Watkins / Jimenez to a 4.5. Not really sure I want to do that. I think Watkins is worth a downgrade. I know he plays in Game Week 30, but when you're watching Watkins play, I don't actually think he's one of the priority players. So if we look at some of the underlying stats as well, for Aston Villa, I just don't think he's too much of a focal point anymore. In previous games, we were actually seeing that Watkins was one of the sort of leaders, in a sense, of expected goals, expected assists, but I think he has dropped off a little bit with this sort of new structure. I know Ings didn't have the best game in the second leg, but Watkins is almost playing like a left winger, and I don't think he's that interesting, whereas players like Coutinho are playing very centrally and allowed to move into the edge of the box, sort of in the top of the key. And then players like Cash, they've sort of got the license as well to sort of cut inwards, the way a lot of fullbacks have the last 2 years with innovations from sort of Klopp and Pep. I'm just going to quickly breeze through some Twitter posts. Two transfers. Really want to get rid of one of the Watford strikers. Who do I do? Also got 0.2 million in the bank. That's an interesting one. So obviously you got De Bruyne, who's going to be a huge differential. I might question whether you actually... I mean, I would say first things first. You've got... I mean, you could go maybe into someone like Lacazette if you wanted to look for a striker who would help you out for the next 2 weeks. he would be quite a permanent player too. I don't know if you have the cash for that, but that would be quite interesting. Other strikers would probably be, I mean, I wouldn't want to bring in Jimenez now. The only other striker that I'd ever think about is Kane, but you can't afford him because you've got De Bruyne in your team. So unless you want to make a double, like if you want to take a hit in the direction of De Bruyne, go for Kane and then replace someone like King, then that could make sense. I'd also probably think about playing Cancelo, to be quite honest. I'd play Cancelo over Broja based on the news too. Harold, so thoughts on what you should do? 0.3 in the bank and use the free transfer to do you start Cancelo, Foden, or Weghorst? I think you start Cancelo. I think you start Weghorst. I mean, it doesn't really matter because you have to play one striker no matter what. And then the decision is going to be between Cancelo and Foden. And potentially, I think with Crystal Palace being quite a solid team, I imagine that's going to be quite a low-scoring game, so I'd be quite happy to go with Cancelo over Foden. I think you've made the right decision there. Maybe you should get Kulusevski instead. Not sure if you wanted him for more than 1 week, though. I mean, you probably do want him for game week 30, right, Jerome? So, at least, like, I think when we think about things like that, then it's worthwhile. If you're planning on 3 hitting, then maybe you can sidestep Kulusevski if you'd like. I just think the lack of coverage of Spurs players is a little bit worrying. So, sorry about the bench as well last week. I can see probably Saka's or Martinelli, fair enough, and Trent as well. That's pretty rough. But you still did incredibly well points wise, and that's simply because you put the right captaincy on. So good for that. What are your plans regarding Vardy? Because I'd like to know what you're planning to do. Are you just going for Coutinho to Foden this week? I mean, is there that much upside in Coutinho to Foden? Because it's not even like Foden's really doubling, and I don't think Crystal Palace is the perfect matchup for him. Up to you though. I see what you mean about Kulusevski now. Sorry, I just read the back half of your tweet. Because obviously, who are other double players that might be interesting long term? I mean, it'd probably be one of Son or Kane, if that makes sense. And I find it a little bit tough to go for Foden this week when there are much more tempting doubles. Maybe maybe someone like Saka is okay because Saka, at least you feel like there's a bit of permanence there in his position. You feel like he's someone who's also very in form, and I think he's not too bad. Bench boost this week, can't figure out. I mean, I probably wouldn't bench boost this. I wouldn't bench boost that, so I'm just going to downvote that to sort of suggest that. You've 2 free hit chips left. Do you need to use one next week, or can you hold on? So you got Rafinha, Jimenez, Kane, Kulusevski, Saka. 5. And then you've got Sa. Yeah, I mean, you can hold on for sure. I think you hold. And that's not a bench boost for me. Good morning, mate. Any changes for the starting 11? So my starting 11, no changes there. As far as your starting 11, I mean, I think about maybe playing Coutinho over Broja. What would I change? You've already used your free transfer. You got 1.2 million in the bank. Let's see. I'd probably take Broja out based on news, and I'd play Jimenez. I actually think the rest of your team is very solid, and I wouldn't really think about changing too much if you're not interested in going for a third Liverpool player. I see what you mean about double city, but obviously last week is a good example of where, in a sense, you want to have double city, but you might not even have the right haulers for city. But I kind of understand your opinion. A good transfer for this team. I mean, I think your team is really well set up. Maybe you could take out Ramsey already, but I don't see why that's worth it. You could also take out Kilman potentially for Doherty. I think that could be a good choice. But the problem I would say is how you address the benching situation with someone like Rudiger. Do you just play all the doubles, or do you drop someone like Jimenez? Because I think that would potentially make sense going out of Kilman, because we know that Kilman's position is no longer secure. When should you bench boost? I think you can bench boost looking towards some of the back end of the game week, such as 36 and beyond, things like that. Should quickly go back to the YouTube chat. Start Weghorst or Broja. Probably Weghorst for now. Ayrton says start Rafinha or Coutinho. I'd probably start Coutinho first, but I'd try to think about getting Rafinha in too. Leanne says after the cheat sheet video, she took a gamble on cash, even though they have West Ham. Fair enough. I mean, I think going against the grain does net you a lot of points if you make the right decisions. So he is ultimately one of the most informed players right now, and good luck to you on that. Hey, Fran, start Jimenez or Broja. Probably Jimenez, guys. I think the Brentford fixture is a decent one for Weghorst for sure. Free hit suggestion. We can actually look at that very shortly. Definitely in a few minutes. Someone just came to the stream. Is there a reason for me to drop Broja to third sub? I don't think it's bad form. I think there's just news that he might be benched, and for that reason, I don't really want to play someone who's going to be benched. Thoughts on starting Ramsey versus Broja this week? I mean, it's not. I think the upside isn't huge, because in the new sort of structure that Aston Villa is playing, and I imagine they will play the same formation, because you saw players like Ings and Coutinho getting rested. I wouldn't be a huge fan of going for Ramsey over Broja. I'd probably think about someone else in your bench if there's anyone else who could play. Antonio or Broja? Maybe I'd play at Antonio just because he actually gets the 90 minutes. My transfer plan, so I've already taken 3 hits. Well, not 3 hits, sorry, but 2 hits alongside a free transfer. So 3 transfers overall. And my team is probably going to be like this with Broja at the back of the bench. Salah, the EO could be 200 or something, for sure. A lot of people have been discussing triple captaining Salah this week. I mean, let's keep in mind that 60% of the population did play a triple captaincy on Salah a few weeks ago. So I wouldn't be too worried about Salah. I mean, he's probably at best going to be a little bit of a spy, but nothing too serious. Start Cody or Broja? I'd probably start Cody at this point. All right, I'm just gonna quickly go back to Twitter for a brief second. I like taking a hit for a Liverpool player over a Chelsea player. I've done that myself. Hey, Fran, having a benching headache. Who should I bench out of Jimenez, Cancelo, Coutinho? Oh, that's a tough one. Who would you change? VVD for Cancelo? Would I bench boost now? Probably not, based on the Broja news. I'd actually probably start White. Who would I start between Cancelo, Broja, and Rudiger? You're currently on Cancelo in this bench order. I mean, the one thing that kind of scared... I mean, I think that's actually the right decision, just because... I mean, maybe I'd actually put Rudiger first bench. So this is your wildcard draft with 10 playing Gameweek 30. Any thoughts on not having Coutinho and possibly captaining Kane? I think this team is good. I'm not a huge fan of Hwang, sorry. But ultimately, I like that you've actually gone for Barnes. I think that Leicester mid position is going to be quite crucial and should help you out a lot tremendously in Game Week 30. As far as the sort of positions in terms of cash, I also think he was a very sensible pick on the wild card. So for me, I guess hopefully you would expect that he covers Aston Villa quite well. Not many people really will be too invested into Aston Villa. I've actually already seen people kind of move out of Coutinho. And the cash ownership is still extremely low because people have still been prioritizing double gaming players as opposed to going for cash. So I think you've done well there. If this is the team that you'd like to avoid Coutinho with, I think I'll say fair enough. Thoughts on your team? Let's see. So Rudiger on the bench is a little bit scary, but I think understandable based on the other fixtures. Rafinha versus Norwich probably slightly better than Rudiger versus Newcastle, and then Coutinho I think is just on too good form. I think you've done the order just right. Thinking James to Doherty. Okay, so you've done Doherty, Martinelli, and Kane for -8. Look like those transfers. Debating the other -4 for Bo and Kulusevski, but still don't know if it's worth it when you can just play Broja. Well, I mean, it seems like Broja might not be able to be played, so... So tough decision this week. Thinking of rolling and playing a 4-5-1, benching King, Dean, and Broja. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think that's fair just because Jimenez, if you own Jimenez in your team, is a very logical pick to start as the solitary forward for your team. Let's have a look at YouTube chat. Briefly. So would I start James Ward-Prowse or Jimenez? I'd probably start Jimenez, to be quite honest. I think Southampton haven't shown the best of form. Everton's defense has been very, very poor, and you can sort of seize that opportunity with Jimenez. Whereas with James Ward-Prowse, something I've always mentioned is that even if, let's say, Southampton play fantastically, because he's also someone who gets so many points from set pieces, you don't know whether that's guaranteed versus a team like Watford, even though Watford's defense is bad. Would I start Cancelo or Cash? I'd probably start Cancelo. Start with Jimenez or Adams. I'd probably start with Jimenez. Morning, what should you do? Rafinha and James to Robbo and Martinelli, Odegaard, or Jimenez and James to Doherty. I like the James. I like the Lacazette and Doherty move just because it helps you out with Gameweek 30 more, and you can keep Rafinha for Norwich. What to do with Virgil van Dijk? Already on a -12, and apparently he's not on the lineup tonight. Yeah, I mean that's a tough thing. I did also take a hit for Van Dijk, but let me actually have a look at some of the news if we can actually get something on Van Dijk. Now you're hearing it's not looking good for Van Dijk. No, I think that's just bait. All right, let's have a look at This Is Anfield. Do you guys think Van Dijk's actually 100% out? I mean, I guess you have to go for Robertson, right? But then at the same time, that's a tough one. I'd probably try to keep Van Dijk, hope he plays the second game, because maybe Robertson loses the clean sheet. I thought Brighton looked exceptional versus Liverpool the last time out, so that's one thing that worries me a little bit. Doesn't seem like the news on Van Dijk's confirmed, but if anyone can send that to me, send that across to me, that would be really helpful. Help getting really stuck here. What to do? 1 free transfers are in the bank. Raf and James, Robbo and Martinelli. Yeah, I mean, I would say... I'd go Robbo this week, probably. If you can. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. Oh, I'm in a similar situation as you then. I don't think I would take another hit for Robbo. I think we just called it a day. Hope Van Dijk scores versus Arsenal. Worst case scenario. Do you know what I mean? So I agree with the sentiments there. I think you just keep it like so. And who knows, we've had some poor sort of misinformation. Andy says his understanding his BVD is fine. Yeah, I think we just keep Virgil van Dijk and call it a day. Is Cedric a good punt? I don't think Cedric's a good punt. I'm sorry about that, Nanjay. What do I think Salah's EO will be this week? Probably something like 220%, 210% maybe. First sub, Broya or Dennis. Broya might have a cameo. Actually, maybe it might still be around 200% because I can see a lot of people wanting to captain Kane this week. First sub, Broya or Dennis. Broya might have a cameo. Yeah, I'd probably first sub Dennis. Because cameo wise, I mean he is someone who can score late in games, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of taking Raf out of teams, by the way, guys. Just because he plays in 30 himself and the matchup is very, very good for this week. Charlotte Attorney, I do like that move, Krishna. Start Dean or Broy. I'd probably start Dean based on the news. Hey Fran, thoughts on the wildcard team? Any changes would I make? So wildcard wise, so it seems like we've geared your wildcard towards 3-hit 30 as well. Can't complain too much. I'm not a huge fan, to be fair, of double Wolves defense now, just because I don't think they've looked particularly good lately. That's one thing I would comment. I'd prefer having Cash in your team. I'd prefer maybe replacing Cody for Cash. I think otherwise the wildcard looks interesting because you've gone against the grain there to go for Mane. I suppose the rest of the team looks like you've actually balanced the team structure quite well. There's a lot of budget players though, so maybe one thing I would mention is that you do seem to be kind of quite reliant on maybe taking a hit to take one of Mane or Kane out in the future. If you're happy to do that, then that's fair enough. I'm not always hugely fond of a triple sort of premium, but if you can plan to go out of that triple premium shortly, let's say after 30, then I think that's very reasonable. But yeah, as I said, I would try to cover Aston Villa as well. And I would also think about maybe a forward from Leicester and Brentford, just to think about how you're covering game week 30 effectively. Because the way it stands, you're covering almost 2 fixtures tops, or 3 fixtures tops rather, but in the direction of Wolves versus Leeds, and then you're covering Arsenal and Spurs in that sense for game week 30. Whereas if you wanted to wildcard to base it around game week 30 and making sure that you do well there too, then you need to make sure you cover players like from Aston Villa, players from hopefully one of the Brentford/Leicester game, I think, to put yourself in a good position for that week too. Otherwise, I think the team actually looks very good for this week. I'd probably not start Broya though. And that's probably a little bit of the weakness of going for Mane too with your team. You're kind of forced to have at least 3 to 4 budget picks. As you can see, you've got Johnson, Martinelli, Hwang, Broya, all super budget picks who probably you might want to transfer into at least a little bit more of a premium within one of them. And that probably means cutting Mane down. But if you think it's a differential and you want to go for the triple premium, then I won't stand by. I mean, I won't stand against you. Thoughts on this team? I wouldn't. Is it bench boost worthy? Probably not. I'd like to start Coutinho, but I think it's bench boost worthy. We've just started our latest thread for the upcoming game week. Okay, that's slightly old. What would I do from Dan Thompson? Who would I start in bench order? I mean, I think that looks fine. What do you think about this team? Should I take out Cancelo for Robbins for -8? I do like that. As far as bench boosting, I wouldn't bench boost. I think Sanchez is a very bad matchup, so it's very not worthwhile. Vardy and Ramsey is a pain. Also think about Cancelo for Doherty. Yeah, you could look at that actually. It's not a bad move. And Vardy's obviously going to be a pain. I think Vardy to Lacazette for short term makes sense to me. Hey Fran, here's my team for Game Week 29. You're already on a -4. Any suggestions? Most probably 3 hit on Game Week 30. Not sure though. I mean, let's discuss Game Week 30. I suppose you've got Tierney, Cody, Ramsdale, Doherty, so that's 4 players at least. And then you've got Saka, Coutinho. Anyone else? Bowen, who potentially plays. I mean, I think you should take out Bowen for someone like KULUSEVSKI this week. Would I change anything? Probably not, to be honest. I do like the way the team's laid out. Hey Fran, hope all is well. I'd start Jimenez. Think about Cancelo to Robertson, but Kilman not going to start either. I agree with that. I mean, that's not really a problem. I'd probably think about if you actually go for Robertson, then you'd probably have to bench Thiago Silva and then make him first bench, and I'd probably play Jimenez over Broja. Reece to Doherty, bench dilemma. Do I take a hit to get rid of Broja, Jimenez, or Rafinha? I wouldn't 3-hit on 30. I actually think you've got a very lovely team for 30. I feel like too many people are thinking about 3-hitting on 30. You don't need to have 11 players for that week, in my opinion. You've got Dean, who's going to be a huge differential. Coutinho, who should be a differential because a lot of people are transferring him out. Rafinha will continue to be a differential because people are transferring him out for sure. Then you've already covered Saka and Ramsdale in terms of Arsenal. And I think that leaves you in a good position because you have Son and then Doherty for Spurs. And I think you're in a good position there. You might just want to think about one forward transfer in that week as well. Maybe to get out of, let's say, Broja as an example. And that's the only thing I'd really think about because I think you've got a good team there. Vardy to Kane and Cancelo to... Oh, those are lovely transfers. So OJF, thoughts on Wildcard. So keeping Havertz on the wildcard is interesting, but I did mention to a friend that I think keeping him for the rest of the season is good because Chelsea's matches are very strong. Laporte hopefully can cover Cancelo for a while. As far as the wildcard, the same comment I'd probably make is I'd just consider Aston Villa because I just think they're such a good team. Let's also have a look at some of the other. So Brandon. So Bowen to Saka, Smith Rowe to Kulusevski, James to Reguilon. Thoughts? I like those transfers very much so. Reguilon's going to be a huge differential too because a lot of people have gone for Doherty. Starting Ramsdale, Dean, Tierney, yep. Reguilon, Kulusevski, Salah, Son, Saka, Broja, Watkins. Maybe, I mean, I guess, yeah. Maybe you prefer Broja over Dennis overall. I like the 4-5-1 though. Let's go back to YouTube chat very quickly. If you guys could also like the video, that would be really appreciated. Hi, Anka. Nice to see you around. Is Cancelo still sick? I don't think he's still sick, but maybe Pep sees it as an opportunity to give him additional rest. I don't know whether that's the case. I have no confirmations or no sort of inside sources on that. My chip availability is just the free hit. You've got Sa, Jimenez, Broja, and Saiss. Should you bench boost? You probably shouldn't bench boost because I think Broja's... I would like to start Jimenez in this week, but I wouldn't really think about bench boosting. Your team is really good. You don't have Saka. Would you take out Coutinho to get Saka? I mean, I'm in the same position as you, and I'm not going to go Saka this week, if that helps. But I have been burnt by Saka a lot. What is Broja news? Apparently, he just might not start because he had a knock. So that's the sort of main news there. James out, Tierney in. Yeah, I think you probably... I'm not a huge fan of Tierney in for this week. If you already have Ramsdale as your keeper, I probably wouldn't take James out. It depends on who else is starting in that position, though, because James is probably not going to play this match. Thoughts on bringing in Tony? I think Tony makes sense for the next week. I don't think he makes sense this week necessarily, because there are just much more interesting free transfers for me. Kane, Kulu, Tierney, extra hit, or Adams, Son, Martinelli. I'd probably actually go for... Yeah, I mean, I like the extra hit there. I think getting Kane in for the extra hit is worthwhile. Son and Kane already, so Doherty or Kulusevski. Probably Doherty, right? Because you've kind of covered attacking positions. Maybe they could even get clean sheets. Any resources about Alonso/Mount starting the game tomorrow? I don't think so, but I think Mount's probably locked to start. Was there any sort of news about Alonso not starting, though, Animate? And a pleasure to see you around as well. James to Robertson for a -8. I'd probably think about for a -8. What do you mean by -8 though? In that situation, who else is going for your team? I think he is worth a -8 for this week because James is probably not going to play. I did use most of my chips earlier on, yes, but I still have a free hit. Dyer to Doherty for a -4. That's the type of side grade transfer I'd probably be not looking at. Maybe let's say if Doherty gets benched one game, then you're already suffering there. I'd probably try to keep Dyer. You've already done Willock and Rudiger to Kulusevski and Doherty. Fair enough. Should have quickly look at my team now. So obviously the Broja news does send him to the back of the bench for me. We'll see what happens. Hopefully Van Dijk gets to play. I think he's fine. Just a little bit of rough guesstimation based on the last time he got COVID. I don't think he could get COVID so quickly. But maybe I'm wrong there. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. Maybe you could chance it on Virgil as well, but obviously the COVID news isn't super positive, Harold. I'm not sure whether you actually want to play against that. So maybe make a decision there. What Villa would I bring in and for who? Defender-wise, I mean, I'd probably just drop Walker Peters. I'd probably skip that because you got Ramsdale. I think Chelsea have a good chance of getting a clean sheet versus Newcastle. The Arsenal defense hasn't looked super good lately, and maybe you'd like to get Tierney out of your team sooner than you'd expect. Nice triple captainship, by the way. As far as the rest of your team, I think you're in a good position for Game Week 30 regardless. And you can bring in, like, I mean, the logic of taking a hit for Tierney, unless you think he's got plenty of upside playing Liverpool as one of the back half of the games this week, is, in my opinion, the fact that he plays in 30. And you could actually look at that transfer in the subsequent week if you really think you're missing out on an Arsenal player. But I think most people have actually probably decided that Tierney isn't that worthwhile as a pick. And that's something that I've sort of come to as a resolution retrospectively. Cedric is an Arsenal pick. I'd probably avoid Cedric. Who do you guys think will actually haul the most in terms of Spurs players? Arte, yeah. Am I able to check Discord DMs on stream? I can't check Discord DMs on stream. I can just respond to them quickly. So I can just respond to you now. I'm having a look at your team. You're looking to remove Dallo for Doherty. Yeah, I think that's very sensible. Just trying to think about other transfers that you might want to make, and I think that's fair enough. Obviously, I guess you're doubling up on Spurs defense, which is going to be a tough one in this week. I think they've still got tough games, and the reason why you can sort of pick, yeah, I'd probably take Bowen out first. I'd prefer KULUSEVSKI, but maybe you can go for SAKA because you don't have SAKA. So I think you already have Reguilon. I think you're in a good position there. Foden is actually a good differential, and you could probably just drop Cody to the bench. Yeah. Let's see. So Robs, you don't know why you still have him, but you had yeah. Thank you, Arte. All right, let's just go back to YouTube chat for quickly. So Greg says, "Hope you're well. Hope you're well too, Greg. Just wondering if you would start Coutinho or Rudiger. I'd probably start Coutinho just because he's so in form, and we've seen how explosive he could be. And honestly, Aston Villa have really blown teams out of the water lately, so that's been incredibly impressive. The bench order out of Broja, Cody, or Ramsey. Kulusevski or Martinelli would have Kane. I'd probably go for Martinelli then in that case. Laka and Son or Kane and Martinelli. I like Kane and Martinelli a lot more, if I had to be honest. Just because I don't really like what Lacazette provides in terms of goal scoring, whereas I think both Kane and Martinelli are serial goal scorers, as is Son. But Laka plays a little bit more of a contributory role, I think, to assisting and almost covering spaces that a striker who drops deep does, as opposed to a striker who's actually looking to score all the time. Already on -4, we got Saka and Kulu. Should you do Coutinho? I wouldn't move out of Coutinho. But I do like going out of Watkins. Is that the only way you can get into Sun? What do you think? Sanchez double? I'd probably go for the Sanchez double over the Foster single. I mean, Watford have been terrible in single game weeks themselves. And even though Brighton haven't been particularly good, I'd still prefer Sanchez. Son and Kane already, so Doherty or KULUSEVSKI. I'd probably go KULUSEVSKI. Definitely silent sometimes. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on. Can you guys hear me well? Would you start Kilman or Adams? I'd probably start Adams because Kilman's role in the team is a little bit suspect, isn't it? Should you start Weghorst or Dennis? I'd probably start Weghorst. Can you check my DM on Twitter? Absolutely, I can. Triple captain Salah. I think it's a worthwhile play. You could also look at triple captaining Kane as well. Will Virgil van Dijk play? I think he will, but I'm not really sure about the news really. And Andy mentioned that he seemed fit to play, but we can't really be sure. I'm sorry about that. I can't give you that sort of confirmation. Bench boost Dubravka, Coutinho, Broja, Ait Nouri. I don't think it's worth the bench boost. I'm sorry about that. I mean, it's not too bad because at least you've got Dubravka with the double. But then with Broja maybe not getting a start, that's going to be a little bit worrisome for the bench boost. Any news on Liverpool, Kane or Salah captain? I'd probably go for Salah captain, but I don't really think Kane is very far off. I'd say it's 45-55 for me. Doherty is the trap and you're ready to fall into it. I mean, I've already fallen into it, Ahmed, so nice to be in the same boat. Rafinha to Saka -4, worth it. I was thinking about that R9 for the whole of this week, but I really think at the end of the day it's not. Ultimately, you have to you have to think about Saka playing an additional game versus Liverpool, probably not very good. And Rafinha versus Norwich, I mean, even though we think Rafinha is doing quite poorly with Leeds right now, and especially because Leeds are poor, I would have to say at the end of the day, this is probably the best fixture that Rafinha could have, and you might as well keep him for it. Transfer out Rafinha or Coutinho for KULUSEVSKI. One, I wouldn't transfer out either for this week. We're all on the Doherty trap. The most confusing week. But why do you think Emerson is just going to play, though? I think Emerson has been a horrendous player. Is Broja benched? Potentially he is. He's benched on my team, at least. I'll tell you that. Just because I'm a little bit worried about the actual bench. Start Lucas Dean or Ait Nouri? I'd probably start Ait Nouri. Much easier matchup versus Everton. Should you take an extra -4 Bowen to KULUSEVSKI? I do think that's worth the -4, Jack. Can I please check? Yep, I can have a look at Twitter DMs very quickly. Yep. What to do with Rafinha, bro? You want to sell for KULUSEVSKI. You have no Spurs players and you have Bamford. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'd go for it if you want to cover Spurs in some sort of way. Bench Dean, Ait Nouri, or Ramsey. Tough choice. I'd probably bench. You end up going Coutinho to Foden. You don't really rate the doubles. Fair enough. I agree with the Arsenal doubles being poor. I think Spurs isn't necessarily poor because I think Spurs and United always seem to have games where they have maybe higher scoring sort of goal fests. So I'm not really worried about that from, how restricted in a sense Harry Kane's going to be, or how restricted Son and KULUSEVSKI are going to be from the doubles. But I hope that works out for you. And yes, actually, I would agree. City players have always been very, very strong in terms of differentials. But sometimes they will hurt you as well. So previously last week, I think I kept Cancelo, whereas most people had already moved off from him. And I sort of paid the price for it because unfortunately Sancho scored quite early on. Good luck this week to yourself as well. Mark, any of the midfielders out for KULUSEVSKI? I mean, I'd probably not go for KULUSEVSKI in terms of the midfield. I'd rather you just take Livramento out of your team, maybe. But he does have a good matchup versus Watford. So it's a little bit of a weird choice there. I think Watkins is the one player I'd like to maybe replace in the future. Maybe you could take Ward-Prowse out, actually. Yeah, I think if you take Ward-Prowse out, then you could actually just bench Livramento, and then you'd be in a good spot. And you can play KULUSEVSKI like that. Is transferring out James for Doherty worth it? I can't confirm for sure. I've done it, though. You're thinking Jota to Saka and Gray to KULUSEVSKI. That could be a nice way. That could be a nice way to go triple Liverpool as well. Think of bench boosting. A lot of single game weeks there. Really depends on Wolves doing well versus Everton. And I know Everton capitulated last week, but I am a little bit worried about the ceiling of this Wolves team. And then Broy also on the bench. I prefer Robertson. Obviously, I have a little bit more comfort over Liverpool as a team. Um, I've gone for personally Doherty and Robertson both, and I don't think there's really a problem with going for 10 players in Game Week 30. There's nothing wrong with that, so I think that's totally fine. I'm actually probably going to dip out of the stream quite early, guys. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week in terms of transfers. I've no updates on Marcos Alonso starting. People are wildcarding 28. Should they bench boost 29? I mean, if you've planned to bench boost 29, then you should do that. But if your bench boost 29 is weak, so for example, a lot of players have players like Kilman or Broya on their bench boost, and those players don't seem to be playing this week potentially. So that's what I would say is not really worth it with a bench boost. As far as Mount to KULUSEVSKI for a hit, using free hit in 30, so Mount blank gaming doesn't matter. That's totally fine, Duncan. I think that's if you're free hitting in 30, then I'd probably not want to do that. Ultimately, I would question whether you actually want a free hit in 30. My captain's actually going to be Salah, so a little bit bog standard and boring. Unfortunately, I put Bro at the back of my bench because I'm not sure whether he'll play. I know it's a great matchup versus Watford, but I'm just a little bit concerned with the sort of news with the predicted lineup. I mean, yeah, similar logic here. Andy's kind of put it quite nicely, where he sort of said he's scared about going for a Southampton player because maybe Bro needs a little bit of rest. FPL General's gone out of Broya. Very interesting. We might as well post my team for now. I think this is probably what I'm going to lock in with. So hope you guys have a wonderful week and a wonderful game week in particular. So yeah, that's going to be my team with the Salah captaincy. Thank you guys so much for joining the stream. I hope you guys have a wonderful time and take care.